Hello, everyone. Today, I want to begin a new series. I want to focus on something that I think is very essential. I think it is crucial for our time, and that is identity crisis. We are definitely in a place of a crisis. In fact, maybe what we should do to begin here is to identify what we're talking about. What do I mean by identity? All right. I'm going to look at the dictionary, and this is what the dictionary says: identity, the condition of fact of being a specific person or thing. Individuality, the condition of being the same as a person or thing described or claimed. Okay, so that's identity. And if I said we're in a crisis, we need to understand what that means as well. I mean, just so that we are clear on the things that we are saying. A crisis is a time of danger or trouble, often one which threatens to result in unpleasant circumstances. All right, so there you have it. And I honestly believe that this is a crisis. We're in a crisis because most people that exist today on our planet have no clue who they are. So they just wander and exist aimlessly because they don't know who they are, or they have been told things or taught things about themselves that is just not true. And if you're awake at all, if you're watching and seeing the things that are happening around you, this is so crucial at this moment because children at 4 years old, they don't know who they are. A boy doesn't know he's a boy, a girl doesn't know he's a girl, and so society is telling them you're not even what you are or told you are what you feel like you are. Isn't this a crisis? I mean, I never in my wildest dreams expected that I would have been at a place that we are today. I never would have thought that we would be in a world where things were so upside down. Where I'm now told that your gender is different from your identity. Wow, that. I mean, I'm still. I can understand why in this day and age, people are. I mean, I don't even want to say confused. I think the enemy has done so wonderful a job that he has the entire world. We would think that people are intelligent. We would think that way, right? We think that people are intelligent, but I realize it's not true. And I realize that true knowledge and facts, true knowledge and facts comes only from an understanding of the entire purpose of life and so on. And I believe that lies at the root of not knowing who we really are and what our identity is. So that's the perspective for today. Identity crisis. Because once you understand who you are, then you will live a more fulfilled life. You'll be more satisfied. I mean, there are people who lives and then they just exist. They really don't. I mean, it's been said of even men who are rich and have money because that's what we think. We're even taught that this is the goal of life to have wealth and accumulate as much material things as you can. But what is happening to these people who have wealth and all of this? They are not happy, and because they are not happy, sometimes they commit suicide. I mean, they do things that you and I would never do because we're not in that state. Okay, that state because we understand differently who we are. We understand what makes up life. We understand what causes us to be here, and all of these are fundamental things, and that's what I'd like to do. But I think since this is a series and this is the first part of it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus in a little bit on certain things that I would call the basics of life. And once you understand the basics of life, once you understand I mean, these questions that we rarely ask, these questions that we rarely talk about. I mean, these fundamentals. These are the things that I think I would like for us to examine a little bit here. And so I want you to focus with me on the things that are, well, I would say these fundamental questions. I think there are probably about four of them. The first one would be, who am I? The second one would be, where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? See, in four questions, if you can properly answer these four questions, then you will be actually on your way to living fulfilled lives. You'll be actually on your way. This is the beginning of a journey of success, a journey of satisfaction, once these questions can be asked and fully understood. So what I want us to do is to examine the perspective of how things were. I mean, at the beginning, there was nothing, okay? And then something happened. And the first thing that happened was that God created life. All right, so we're not talking about the steps of creation as to what was made first and so on. And so, in other words, God made everything. Sure, Genesis tells us that God was making preparation for the person that would be given life. So everything that happened before was simply just preparation for that life that was to come. So God gave life. Life came on the planet. Life came into a being, and these beings begin to enjoy. I won't go into the details of one first, then the next, but just the fact that life came. Now, what is interesting is in short order, something happened. Something happened to that life. That life fell into a state called sin. And that maybe needs a lot more explanation, that perspective of sin. But in a nutshell, I'll tell you what that is. Sin really is separation from God. So what happened is that life, once connected to God, that life was for everlasting. That life would have lasted and existed forever. But something happened, and man made a choice. Man made a choice, and that choice caused separation from God. That choice actually came about because of disobedience. That choice came about because man chose himself outside of God. Man chose to make his own decision instead of following the advice of God. And so the result of that was sin. Well, once sin comes in, which is separation from God, once man is separated from God, once life is separated from God, then the result is going to be death. Because if God is life, if he's the originator of life, the sustainer of life, well, he's the giver, the originator, the giver, and the sustainer. Once you're disconnected from him, then, as I said, the natural result would be death. All right. Now, so this is clearly how things will be. That you're born, you're given life, but you're in a state of sin or separated from God, and the consequence of that separation will be death. But God, because he loves us, God, because of his great love, did something that is amazing. God stopped the process. God stopped the process. And this is where the gospel comes in. And I know most people don't even understand what this is because it has been so messed up by those who claim to be proclaimers of the gospel. But what God did was stop the process. He stopped the process that was a consequence of what happened when he gave the first life. And by stopping the process, he introduced something. He stopped the death that would be a natural occurrence or a natural consequence of the sin. He stopped the process, or I would say postponed the process, and gave something instead. What he gave us was Jesus. And Jesus then is that reality. Jesus is that good news. And Jesus actually gave us something called probation. And I want you to understand, because this is so beautiful. Once you understand this, you'll recognize that in giving us this probation, it is actually our lifetime, or the probation that we've been given. Once you understand the full picture, once you understand the full picture of how things are, you get to understand our purpose on earth, our mission here, why we're here, and what we are expected to do. So what God did was stop this process, gave us Jesus, which is the gospel. Jesus is the gospel. And what he did was give us something called a probation. All right. Now, you know what a probation is, of course. A probation is simply according to the dictionary, or just even your understanding, a probation is the suspension of sentence of a person convicted but not yet imprisoned on the condition of continued good behavior and regular reporting to a probation officer. Another meaning is the fact that it's a suspension of a sentence. That's what a probation is. Or in this case that we're dealing with here, it's the suspension of death. So I want you to consider then, as we think about this, that God postponed the consequence of sin, which is death. God suspended that consequence of sin and instead gave us an opportunity to not just good behavior now, gave us an opportunity to choose life. So this is what the formula would look like. This is what the reality looks like. God postponed. Let's use the probation. God gave us a probation where we're given this time of grace, and maybe even right here is a very good place for you to think about that verse in John 3:16. This is a verse that we probably all know. I think worldwide this is well known. This is a well-known verse. For God so loved the world that he gave us his only begotten Son. That's the grace that we have been given, the only begotten Son. For what reason? That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So what I want you to see then is that God gave us this reality, and this reality was he gave us a lifetime. In fact, if you look at the book of Psalms, it tells you that our average lifespan is 70 years. Okay, I mean, in days gone, it was much more than that, and in the early days, far more than that. Okay, but so we're given an average lifespan of 70 years, or by reason of strength, David says we go 80 years, but that's an average lifespan. But if you think about it, in 70 years, what is the purpose of 70 years? 70 years of a lifetime. This is actually 70 years of probation, or 70 years we've been given to make one choice. Well, I say one choice, but either you make a choice and you go back to life. Look at the diagram we have on the screen. In 70 years, we can choose one of two exits, because that's really what it is. One of two exits. Either we choose life and we go back to life, to the original state that God created us to be in, or we don't choose any at all, and we end up in the same place that we would have been had God not introduced the gospel. Anyway, it is such an awesome thing that our God, in his grace and his goodness, in his love, has given us this time that is our lifetime. So I want you to see that as you look at this, what we're looking at, this blank page, is actually our lifetime. This blank scene here is our lifetime, and in this lifetime, we need to make a choice. How do we spend our lifetime? This is an interesting question, and I'm going to hasten on to say we spend our lifetime based on what we understand our lifetime to be. We spend our lifetime based on the knowledge that we have, and it comes back to those fundamental questions that we asked earlier. Once you can understand and you can answer correctly, these 4 questions that were asked at the beginning: who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Then you'll understand it's easier. Now, once you understand this, to spend your lifetime in fulfilling your purpose. Does that make sense? But instead, I want to show you a little bit as to what takes place once we are born in this world. I'm showing you where the world has educated us to look. So first, we're told we must have education, and so in from an early age, we are sent to school from an early age to as kindergarten. I think even now there is forget it, but anyway, so education is the first thing that most people sees as important for a newborn child. I mean, so daycare, and even in daycare they start educating, then kindergarten, and you just keep climbing the ladder. Primary, middle school, high school, and then college and university, and so you are educated, and now you have a career. And having a career, I mean, that's what you're educated in, your career. The next thing is finding a job in your career. And when you get a job in your career, you now work towards making a name, establishing yourself, and making a name. And then once you are settled in that place, then I think finding a partner. Sometimes this is even put between a job and making a name and even a career. We find our spouses in school and in university, and we just wherever we are. But we find a partner. And then once you find a partner, then the next thing we're taught is to start a family. And you start a family, you're making money to sustain your family, and guess what? You are giving the family the best that you can. You're looking to establish and educate. You're actually starting the same process that you did. Once you start a family, you're now educating your family, your children, to do the same thing that was taught to you. And so it's interesting that you keep going. You're looking towards retirement, but it's not a problem. You're repeating the cycle, and so your children are doing the same thing. You now have a good retirement, and a new generation is repeating the same process that you came through. That is basically how we are taught. That is basically how we are taught that life is, and we just pursue this. And very, very, very sadly, at the end of this process, we in retirement, some of us don't reach retirement. Some of us, we are dead before. I mean, sickness and disease and all sorts of things takes over, and so these are just things that we never anticipate happening. But I'll tell you this: it's all because there is a wrong conception as it relates to our reason for being. A wrong conception because there is an identity crisis. All right, so the correct perspective should have been that we understand why we're here. And if once we understand why we're here, then we know we've been given 70 years. How awesome is this? That just for you to make one choice, you've been 70 years, you've been given 70 years just to make a choice, just to choose. So the way out of life, and you know what the diagram we saw, there are two ways out of life. Either you go back to life, or you go to where the consequence of sin would have brought you, to death. And that death, I mean, is total annihilation. That is complete and total annihilation of forever. I mean, of never existing ever again. So that is the perspective. Now, if you think about it carefully, the truth is that we only have one choice. Well, yeah, it's not two choices. It's really one choice. Either we choose life, we choose Christ, we choose his way, and go back to God, reconnected. That's the point. When we say we go back to God, that's what we're talking about. We reconnect to life, because that's really the essence of how things were. It was that Adam was connected to God, and in that connection to God, he would live forever. He broke that connection, separated himself from God, and that's what brings death. So the perspective that Jesus brought here, the perspective of the gospel, And should, in case you have not heard this before, this is really what the true gospel is about. It is about giving an opportunity to choose life, to choose Christ, to choose His way over my way, His way over just existing in the way that it has always been before. And once we choose His way, then we would have received that reconnection to God. That is what true life is, meaning everlasting life. And that's what the verse we quoted earlier says, that we may not perish or die, but have everlasting life. And that everlasting life is not unending life, living forever. But we can live like we can live as we have been living and make no choice at all. Don't choose the gospel. Don't choose Christ. And what would be the result? Of course, it would be what it has always been determined to be. It would have been death. So that is the road that is set before us here, friends. And the question is really, which exit will you take when you leave life? When you exit this world, which exit will we take? Because there are only two exits, right? Either we have made a choice for Jesus, or we did not choose Him. It's very simple. We made a choice for Him, or we did not choose Him. I believe this lies at the very foundation of what we're talking about here. The very foundation of the things that we're discussing here is this question: where do we exit life? All right, so that is certain. Okay, that is certain. But how is it that the verse we read says we will not perish but have everlasting life? Is everlasting life something promised to come, or is everlasting life already existing here? Well, that's the choice. That's the beauty of the gospel. The beauty of the gift of grace. The beauty is that we have been given everlasting life right here. That everlasting life is in Christ Jesus. And you can receive Christ Jesus here and now, right where you are, watching this video or listening to this audio. You can have everlasting life. It is as simple as making a choice, choosing Him. Remember, how do we do that now? It's by believing. Whosoever believeth in Him. What's the condition of the person who believeth? The person who believeth in Him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And that reality exists the moment that you believe. So, isn't that interesting that all our choice really is to choose to believe in Christ, to choose to believe in what He has done for us and what He has given to us. And the choice is yours. But in honesty, I must say, there are people who are probably wanting to know. Let's say you are among those who never heard, because I'm amazed that there are people who were never taught the truth of what the gospel is. We have been taught things about church and church membership, and I think that is wrong. It is about a person. His name is Jesus Christ. He is the Son of the living God. He is the only begotten Son of the living God. He was sent on earth to make a way back to the Father. Because remember, man lost his connection. Man lost his life connection with God. Man separated himself from the source of life. And so Jesus came to connect us back to the source of life. But how are we connected? All right. So in simple terms, this is what I'll explain. Man stepped away from God. But man could not just go back to God. It's not easy. Why? Because without God, man can't choose God. That sounds almost selfish, right? But the word says clearly, Jesus says, "No man cometh unto me except my Father draws him." And so what we are so blessed with is this perspective of God's life, God's power that is at work in our world. It's at work in every heart. God is there as the drawing force. to bring us to Christ. But it is only activated when when we hear the gospel, when we hear the good news. Once we hear the good news, then the Spirit is there to convict our hearts that this is the truth. We need a Savior. How do we come to that place, friends? We come to that place when we recognize that in us is no good thing. We come to recognize this when we realize that everything that we have done, we have failed. We come to recognize this when we realize that nothing satisfies, that all the things that we have done all our lives just never that satisfies us, that there's an emptiness inside of us. And if you're honest and truthful, and you've never really connected or found Christ, you realize that nothing fulfills that place in you, because God has so created us that we would yearn for Him, and desire Him like we've never done before. I've been listening to some testimonies. I've been listening to testimonies of people from different religious background, and I mean, when I say religious background, people like Muslims and Hindus and so on. I've just been listening to these people talk about, they doing all that committing themselves and submitting themselves to religion, doing all the following the formalities, and still there's an emptiness, that there's something. And it's amazing how they come to Christ. They come to Christ because they desire something. I mean, look at as something as simple as this. Somebody just being in a state to say, God, if you exist, show yourself to me. But that comes from a sincere desire, a sincere heart, a heart that is at the end of the road, a heart that is ready to commit suicide. And so often, when they cry out to God like this, God shows up. Oh, what love. Oh, what love. But this is the perspective. Here in this first presentation, in this first part of the series, I just wanted to bring that out and to bring the reality of the gospel, friends, for you to understand and to recognize that there is a way. There is a way that is right. There is a path that is correct, a path that leads you to a fulfillment and satisfaction, because this is what God intended. This is what the creator of the universe, the creator of you and me, of the humans, intended for us to do, to enjoy this fellowship and communion with Himself. And until we get to that place, we are living in limbo. Until we get to that place, we are just existing. We're not even living. We're just existing. And you think that you're living because you're able to eat and drink and be merry and all of that. There's far more to this, because death is uncertain. And I see death taking people away at birth, and when they're young, and children, and teenagers, and just youth that are being just taken away by the enemy, because the enemy desires to destroy you before you can understand what life is about, before you can understand enough to make positive choices. And once you understand and you recognize this, you realize that this is what life is about. This is what life consists of: being fulfilled and understanding your mission, understanding your purpose. And once you understand your purpose, people talk about purpose living, purposeful living, and satisfaction in life. This is really what it's about. It's about recognizing who you are, where you came from, why you're here, and where you're going. Once these things are riveted and concretized, if that's such a word, and solidified in our hearts and in our minds, I tell you, it will be the beginning of life. The beginning of life, because it will be life with purpose and understanding. That's really, really it. So anyway, I hope that in this first session, you're able to kind of grasp certain things and grasp the direction in which we're taking. And hopefully, parents, I'm hoping that you are doing the best that you can in teaching your children the truth, teaching your children the reality of the things that we're talking about, that they will choose Christ, that they might live. All right? Well, until the next time, take care.